The United States was founded on the political philosophy that all citizens possess equal natural rights. At the exact same time, its entire economy relied on a foundation of severe inequality and forced labor. This is the American blueprint. It is an ambitious national project designed by its architects to be a work in progress, constantly redrawn by the friction between those two opposing forces. When English settlers arrived in Jamestown in 1607, they found starvation instead of gold. Their survival ultimately came from cultivating tobacco, a highly profitable crop that demanded massive amounts of cheap labor to clear the wilderness and work the fields. Initially, poor white and black laborers worked side by side, but after they united to burn Jamestown during Bacon's Rebellion in 1676, the ruling planter class made a calculated legal choice. They codified hereditary slave codes based strictly on skin color. By tying a person's physical appearance to a permanent legal status of bondage, they successfully shattered the unity among poor laborers. The nation's early economic engine was engineered by legally dividing its people. A century later, the Continental Congress adopted the Declaration of Independence, boldly asserting that all men are created equal. Yet its author, Thomas Jefferson, held over 100 people in bondage. Washington and Madison were also enslavers, a ruling class entirely reliant on captive labor. As the Patriots fought the British for philosophical freedom, the British exploited this massive contradiction. Through Lord Dunmore's proclamation, the Crown offered actual emancipation to any enslaved person who fled to British lines. Thousands took the offer. The United States won its war and formed a democratic republic without a king. But by defining freedom exclusively for a select group of men, the founders built a structural flaw directly into the nation's design. By the 19th century, the country looked westward. Political leaders insisted the United States was divinely ordained to stretch from the Atlantic to the Pacific, a concept known as manifest destiny. This infographic maps that expansion. Look at the 1848 gold rush. San Francisco exploded to 20,000 residents, rapidly extracting millions. But preceding this, territorial gains were secured by forcibly displacing 60,000 native people under the 1830 Indian Removal Act, killing at least 15,000. Once cleared, massive federal infrastructure projects like the Transcontinental Railroad stitched the continent together, cutting travel time from months to under a week. The speed of 19th century American progress was astounding. But that economic and technological growth was directly subsidized by the systematic removal of the continent's indigenous populations. This structural tension finally broke the blueprint in half. A democracy expanding its borders while denying humanity to millions inevitably triggered a civil war over state sovereignty and the preservation of slavery. After 600,000 deaths, the Union survived. The nation attempted a massive legal correction, passing the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments to abolish slavery, grant birthright citizenship, and protect voting rights regardless of race. This graphic illustrates the result: the Gilded Age. The industrial machine in the North drove GDP to the highest in the world. Transitioning from left to right, we see the cost. Millions of new immigrants arrived to find severe urban squalor and brutal factory conditions. Industrialists like John D. Rockefeller amassed towering personal fortunes by monopolizing entire industries. Meanwhile, desperate workers facing extreme wage cuts organized mass labor movements, leading to violent clashes with federal troops. Abolishing slavery did not resolve the American paradox. The federal government eventually abandoned Reconstruction, leaving Black Americans to face a century of violent Jim Crow laws, while the Northern economy generated extreme capitalist inequality. Following the Second World War, the United States emerged as a dominant global superpower. The mid-20th century saw an explosion in middle-class wealth, homeownership, and rapid scientific achievement. In 1969, American astronauts became the first humans to walk on the moon. It was a staggering display of technological mastery and a symbol of the country's boundless ambition on the global stage. Yet while millions watched the lunar landing on television, Black Americans were still being beaten and jailed back on Earth, simply for trying to register to vote or sit at a lunch counter. Citizens marched by the hundreds of thousands to dismantle legal segregation. They demanded the equal protection and economic opportunity the Constitution promised a century prior. Even at the height of its Cold War supremacy and technological wonder, the United States still required mass, organized resistance from its own people to secure basic civil rights. Now, the United States is approaching its semi-quincentennial in 2026, marking 250 years since the Declaration of Independence. This diagram maps the intersecting pressures of the modern era. We see technological leaps like artificial intelligence driving up corporate valuations, while simultaneously increasing job insecurity, widening the wealth gap, and deepening political polarization. Polling shows public trust in government institutions is hovering near historic lows. Many citizens feel severe social anxiety and a deep cynicism toward establishment politics. But this friction mirrors exactly what previous generations experienced during the Gilded Age or the Civil Rights era. History is not a fossilized record. It is a living process. The American blueprint requires constant drafting, erasing, and rebuilding by the people living inside it. The United States was never a completed project. The ambition of its founding ideals and the contradictions of its reality create a gap that every new generation is forced to navigate, confront, and close.